Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
From sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Recover You. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene. Try number 3.
Yeah. So today we are going to have an episode where we are answering a listener's question.
Yep.
And it's primarily going to be about the difference between, well, we're not going to break down the difference between men and women's brains, but one of the questions is sort of about, are men's brains really that different from women, you know? And
can I answer that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. See you next week, guys.
Thank you.
There you go. Okay. So basically, we're just going to jump in today.
Yeah.
All right. Is it possible for men to turn off their attraction? Like for me, I can see an attractive man come across my path and that's it. That's all. I'm not attracted to him. I was never tempted to look again, and there are no more thoughts ever entertained. I feel like if I can do it, so can he. The idea that men are wired differently and can't help but look and be attracted just seems absurd to me. I feel like men can help themselves and are babied into believing they can't.
Yep.
That is the question.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is no difference between men and women's brains. Now, things that, what do they say? Things that fire together, wire together. So
good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I think what happens in a lot of cases, and there's a lot in that question about like are men coddled? I think there are in many cases societal like things that can be perpetuated to a young boy and then a teenage boy and then a man, right? So they just start to think that way or whatever, you know what I mean? And so they haven't really had any sort of education that allows them to think differently or says, well, hold on a second. No, you don't have to do that. You don't have, you can actually be. And so I think, so if you're saying that there's a patterning that has been created in a man's head through some societal reinforcement, then that's certainly possible.
Oh,
right?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. But that can certainly happen with women as well. And I don't know a great example there, but there's some societal reinforcement that can happen on something with women as well, right? And so, or a family reinforces something, right? Like a family pattern reinforces something. And so, I feel like that's one of the greatest gifts that comes from recovery is you start to view human beings as you heal. You view human beings for exactly that, as human beings, and you have the power and the wherewithal to go, hey, or in the choice, right? You say, hey, I'm not going to lust after that person, or I'm not going to go down that avenue online which might lead to lusting, because I have learned and I have healed, and it's not only something that my partner does not want me to do, but it's also something that I choose not to do. And so, but I also think that sometimes through recovery, it can be a little scary for a guy to understand, okay, what exactly is happening in my brain? You know what I mean? Is it just, I don't want to lust, right? Sometimes I'll see that. I probably experienced that too. Like I came out of this addiction where I spent all of this time doing all these horrible things, right? So now I'm trying to learn differently. And so what do I do with whatever pops up, that emotion in my mind? Am I fully aware of what that emotion is, right? Or what that can be? Am I lusting, or am I just noticing, right? There can be a difference there. So like, if you...
What's the difference?
Well, like noticing would be, you are there.
What she's talking about sort of in here, she sees an attractive man,
right,
and then doesn't do anything about it.
Right, exactly.
Notice somebody's attractive.
Right. And so there are people that we can be attracted to in my opinion, being attracted to somebody is not.
Okay, but see, you're going to have to clarify what that means, because the way that was just worded, I'm attracted to somebody. A lot of betrayed partners would hear, I'm physically aroused by thinking about that person. So if you say I'm attracted to someone other than my wife, someone would interpret that as I'm physically aroused by someone other than my wife.
I mean, the wording is tricky. I mean, I don't want to be like, oh no, it's very clear.
Right.
Blah blah blah.
Well, so that's what I'm saying.
Tricky.
Clarify what you're saying.
Yeah.
I can be attracted to other people. What does that mean to you?
Right. So like if you all right, let's use Chris Hemsworth.
This is his man crush,
Yeah,
everybody.
this is my man crush. So
he wants to be Chris Hemsworth,
yeah.
basically.
So when I look at Chris Hemsworth, right?
Thor,
the actor who plays Thor, I think he is an attractive man, right? He's muscular, he's good looking. You've
seen some stuff, I think, where you think he's kind of a nice guy or whatever.
He's funny, he's nice, and actually, like I think what I said was like when I view that attraction towards Chris Hemsworth is the type of like I want to hang out with him, I want to crack open a cold one, and I want to go surfing with him, right? Yeah. That to me is like
if
attraction.
Anyone listening knows Chris Hemsworth, we're his people.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
send him this episode.
Yeah. So I mean and the reason I use that is because there is no desire to do anything that steps out of our relationship. There's no desire. There's no sexual desire there or anything like that. That's just like, he's a good looking man. You know what I mean? Like he's just so I think now the scary part comes in if there has been infidelity and stuff like that. Like can you as an addict look at a woman the way I just did, right? The way I just did.
Chris.
Yeah, the way I just described Chris. I think that takes a lot of work. I think it takes a lot of reflection. I think it takes a lot of always checking in. Okay, where's my mind on this? What am I doing? What am I, you know what I mean?
Part of the reason I think it's hard, to your point, isn't that people aren't capable. I think it's the fear-based triggers. So we're going to touch on this in a minute, but let's talk about the amygdala real quick. So when the amygdala is activated, it's part of the limbic system. It has to do with anxiety and fear and lack of self-control and, things like that. If somebody's having an addiction, if somebody's having anger outbursts, if somebody's having compulsivity, the fear responses, all of those things are like in the amygdala, okay? So one of the things I think we have to be really careful about, I'm going to tie a couple things into what you are already saying. One of the things we have to be really careful about with cultural messaging, with parental messaging, with education, with all these things to young men, is we cannot be teaching them fear-based messaging, because the more we teach people to live in their amygdala, the less, the more people are living in fear, essentially. And the more you live in fear, the less self-control you have in terms of you're not living in a grounded state. You're living in a state of anxiety, right? And that's not good for anybody. And when young men are constantly told, like let's say that it's from a quote unquote moral perspective, they're trying to put on young boys not to lust after women, but the messaging that they get all the time is that that's how your brain works, and women are the stumbling blocks, and women are blah blah blah, right? And then in the non-religious settings, you have sort of this laissez-faire attitude about, well, that's just how men's brain are. It's locker talk. Boys will be boys. That's how the male brain works, right? So there's a huge message that is communicating, one, this is how your brain is, and two, women are the enemy. So if you want to be a faithful human, attractive women are the enemy. So if a guy has some sort of moral value system that says, I don't want to lust because I actually think that's wrong in some way, or I'm married and I don't want to cheat, or whatever that is, they have some sort of moral value system that's going to go against what they've essentially been taught is normal in the male brain, then what are they going to do? Women are going to be a fear-based trigger for them. That's going to trigger the amygdala, which is what? Fear and anxiety. And then you have a problem. So it's either going to lead them down, just a life of anxiety and a negative relationship with women in general. I can't be friends with women. I can't hang out with women. I can't be around women without it being a problem, right? And so then even when they're not doing anything, they're like quote unquote aroused, like the brain is aroused, like it not in a sexual way necessarily, but in a fear-based way. There's activation there because they're like, well, I have to be on my guard because if I'm not on my guard, I'm going to do something bad because I have to do something bad because that's the way the boy brain works. And it's like, that is not reality, but that's the state that we are creating through all of this messaging. And so that actually can happen too, like with addicts. So part of what happens in recovery is, okay, well, I'm going from this thing that was legitimately bad, that legitimately crossed a line, which legitimately was infidelity. And here I am trying to do something different, but that's how my brain was patterned. I'm trying not to do it. And now if I see a woman, again, what is happening? She's the fear. She's the bad. She's the anxiety trigger for me. And so I think the messaging is so important because people have to be told, hey, your brain doesn't have to work that way. Hey, you don't have to be afraid of women. Hey, your brain actually has self-control that you can tap into. Because when you get empowering message and you actually choose to believe it, then guess what? You can act on that. But if you keep getting disempowering information that keeps telling you that you just live in this monkey brain and you have no self-control and you see a woman down the street and there's nothing to do except be attracted to her, then guess what you're going to keep doing? Yeah. Even if you want to do something different, if you don't believe you're capable of change, you'll never change. So I do absolutely think there's like a lot of ties, kind of like a lot of strings all tied together through what you were just talking about.
Well, it's with that too. It's like what we're taught, and I believe it to be true. As you recover from addiction, it's the notion of, hey, you were there because you didn't want to face down your emotions, right? So you attribute these emotions that led to lusting, right? So then you're becoming more in tune with your emotions and the fears and anxieties because it's all on the faster scale if you're using that tool, those sorts of things. So then let's say, once again, somebody pops into your peripheral view or whatever that is, and and so now you've got the fear and anxiety and you automatically think that's leading to lust, as opposed to using that level of awareness where you go, well, why is the fear and anxiety here? The Pure Desire podcast had a guy on a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about this, and he brought up this, and he does a great job describing this example. So I'm just going to paraphrase real quick, but he was basically at a gas station. I guess he had not got a lot of sleep the night before, something like that. He was really worn out. At a gas station, he looked over and there was a woman getting gas, and she was really put together. And he had that moment, like that little. He said put together, and what he meant was like she was dressed nice and stuff like that. So I think because he had been so many years in recovery, he kind of checked in with himself. And it's like, what's going on with me? And what he determined was that he kind of created this positive story in his mind that she was like dressed up. She had worked really hard on herself. She was going out to look like she was going to go hang out with some friends and maybe do something fun. He's like, I want to look good in clothes. I want to be able to be, going out and hanging out with friends and be put together. And I just don't feel that way right now. So he was able to connect that, with some real, like slowing his thought processes down, that sort of thing. I think
that's what you're doing when you're slowing down. You're challenging the amygdala response.
Right. Yeah. You're bringing your prefrontal cortex back online to say, hey, let's review these impulses. What's happening in here? Like what's with this? The other thing I always like is what Charles always told me. He's like, hey, if you're walking through the store and you think somebody's pops in front of you and you feel like you're gonna lust or whatever, you just pray for them. He's like, you can't lust after somebody that you're praying for. You know what I mean? And I think once again, if you think about what is that doing? That's also, it's a meditative concept, right? That slows your brain down and kind of reshifts your lens of how you're viewing the world. And well, so I think, that's really important.
Two things with that. One, let me ask you before I throw something in there. How would you pray for somebody? Like, what would you be praying about?
Oh, geez. I mean, I think, it's funny. I remember when he told me that was never my issue, right? Of walking through the world. Yeah,
seeing people.
But I remember what I would say is I would just like, hey, and I'm just once again going to paraphrase. I would just be like, hey, please protect her. She's a child of God.
There you go.
Make sure that she is taken care of.
Right. So you're I love that you answered it that way, because when you said that, what came to my mind is, let's not be praying like random things like, don't let her be a temptation to me, right? Like, maybe not that, right? The idea is to humanize the person. So a non-religious way to do that would be like, if you see somebody and you're trying to slow your brain down, it'd be like, let me think about like, what is her life like? Like what kind of job might she have? Does she have kids at home? Is she someone's kid? Is she married? Like, you put a life and a reality and a world to this person that you're looking at, right? Kind of like what the story that you just described was, I made an assessment based on her outfit that she's put together and excited and going out,
her.
And going out with friends or whatever. Like there's there's an association there. So, so I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. So the question, the question that was submitted, she said, the idea that men are wired differently and can't help but look just seems absurd to me. I would agree. I feel like men can help themselves and are babied into believing they can't. I agree. I think that's societal. And I think that's one of the reasons the messaging has to be intentional with recovery. It can't be a weak message. It has to be a message of strength, a message of transformation, a message of like, you don't have to stay where you are. You can actually accomplish something different. The people that engage in recovery have to want it. Like, they have to recognize that there's something better out there. And they have to go for it. But they also have to be surrounded by people that, and that includes the partner, right? Like, I really pushed that for you, even though, we've talked about all the times that I had questions, all the times that I felt insecure. But at the same time, I also was like, no, there is 100% the possibility that you can recover from this. Don't be distracted by any other messaging you get that just says, this is how you are, because I don't believe that. Yeah. Now you can do with it what you want, but I don't believe that, right? Yeah. So I think the messaging is really, really, really important, that men get the message that, like, I don't care what you've engaged in the past. In terms of your ability to recover, like anything that you have engaged in, your brain has the ability to become a normal, healthy brain with the right tools, with the right support, with the right time and effort and commitment. Like, your brain can just become a normal brain, like a healthy, normal, low inflammation, not triggered all the time, not amygdala activated, fear-based anxiety brain all the time, but actually a calm brain. Like, everybody can accomplish that, you know? So, and that's not a male female thing.
Well, and if you say sex addiction is born out of, trauma and those sorts of things, let's say take sex out of it and say alcoholism. I bet you now there may be more male alcoholics than female alcoholics, but nobody views that as a sex related thing, right? It's like, hey, your brain has become addicted, and so you've got to find ways to change that. Either engage in positive self-talk, positive self-visualization, which I think is really, really important. And I think there's one thing that you said many, many, many years ago that I always bring up to the group when we talk through this topic. And it's changing your wording on things. So like the best example that I always use is, which one is more empowering and more positive for your brain? I can't look at pornography, or I don't look at pornography.
Right. I choose not to.
Right. I can't look at another woman, or I don't look at other women, in an inappropriate way.
That's not who I am.
Right. That's not who I am. And so when you start to do those things and speak in that way, your brain does change, because you're starting to move into a different set of core beliefs.
You get to choose who you want to be. I don't care who you are or what it is that you want in life. Like, you get to choose how you live your life. You actually get to be a person of integrity if you want to. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I agree. I saw a video the other day, and I think I either showed you or I told you about it. But it was a guy who was sharing his story about he was, let's say, 8 years, I think, or so, alcohol free. And he went to a restaurant. He ordered a non-alcoholic drink. The waiter made a mistake and accidentally brought him an alcoholic drink. He had a sip, recognized it immediately, told the waiter, the waiter said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," solved the problem. And then he's like basically reflecting on that and saying, oh, so many people might have gone, oh my gosh, that took so much strength and all this kind of stuff to like have that sip and then not do anything. He's like, no, it didn't. You know why? Because alcohol doesn't fit in my life anymore.
Right.
And I thought, that's it. Like, that is it.
Right.
You get into recovery, and this thing that you used and felt like you couldn't live without doesn't even have a place in your life anymore.
Right.
You don't like it. You don't want it. It doesn't have a place in your life. I just don't think, and in like addiction recovery world, sometimes it's not talked about like that. It's just not talked about where, hey, you can go from depending on this thing to not even liking it, to not even wanting it in your life, right? The brain is so flexible, but one of the first things that has to happen in order for that to be true is that you have to actually make a choice. You have to make a choice that you don't like this thing and you don't like, you want to get there, that you like actually believe that getting there is possible. That is very much a choice, because it's not going to happen the first day. You have to transition into that, but you have to have the vision of where you're going. And that is a choice to say, I think that I can get here. And if that's possible, then I'm going to start practicing that today. And then over time, your brain changes, because that's what brains do. They learn different habits, different patterns, different ways of thinking. You take the stimulus, you calm the amygdala, all this kind of stuff. You get rid of all these things. That's why we say put the boundaries up high in the beginning. But then you're also learning self-control. You're also learning what you were talking about, how to slow down your brain, how to process, how to humanize, how to deal with your emotions. You do all these things in the background. And then even if one day your guardrails came down and that stimulus came back and was standing right in front of you, guess what? You can handle it.
That's right.
Just like that guy did. He said, I actually physically took a sip before I realized something was wrong.
Yeah.
And he didn't ruin his dinner, didn't ruin his night, it was fine.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit in his life anymore.
Yeah, I think what I find myself doing is like, because I'm living in the world, I don't have a lot of restrictions on me, and I think the restrictions I do have are more probably for you to make you feel more safe, really, than anything that would impact my behavior to this day. And so, like, a good example is like, you even said the other day, you're like, yeah, there's sometimes I wake up and I hear you moving around in the morning, and I'm kind of curious, like, are you okay? And what did I say? I was like, well, if you open the door, like to the bathroom, I'd be reading a book about trust or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you do have that book.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. It's like my whole life has changed.
Yeah.
But there are some things when I think ahead. So like here's a good example. I went to Miami a couple of weeks ago, and I was meeting some old high school friends at a place. I haven't hung out in Miami in like a hangout way in 25 years, right? And so it hit me, as they were said, hey, let's meet here. I was like, okay, so what do I do if I show up and it's a place that, I don't know, has, women servers that are dressed inappropriately? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you just never know, you know what I mean? Like beach town, whatever, And so I thought through that, and I was like, okay, well, this is what I'll do. You know what I mean? And so my point is like, I'm never like.
Well, you even said you were talking to someone while you were down there, and they were talking about the different restaurants that were that are inappropriate.
Yeah. And I was like,
and you literally were like,
I was like, I don't go to those.
I can't go to those.
No, I said, I don't go to those places.
Yeah. See, good clarification.
Yeah.
Thank
you. And so, the funny thing is,
or no, actually, I think when you told me, you said I would never go to those or something like that.
Yeah. It wasn't that somebody was keeping me from going.
Right.
It's just, and the funny thing is, they never had any issues, and I think the light bulb went on. They were like, oh, okay, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So anyway, I think as you really, in my mind, the key is with number one, the brains are not different. They have to recover from different experiences. You've had to recover from different experiences that has caused, let's say, OCD in your life. I never had OCD. I had to recover from an addiction, but we both suffered trauma. And so, like, our brain's reaction to that was different. So we are not mindless. We are always accountable for our behavior. And when things flare up, then it's always an opportunity to say, okay, what further work do I need to do? So for you, like, if you have a massive OCD surge, you are so smart nowadays that you'll go, man, I didn't like that. I got to figure out why that showed up the way it did. You know what I mean? Is it just because the place is filthy and we should all get showers, which there's nothing wrong with, right? Or is it something much more than that, right? And so the same thing, I think, when
was I like extra tired that week or stressed?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I always think about, that too, is like, as if if you've been solid for 3.5 years and all of a sudden something happens and it catches you off guard, well, then, like that story I told from the podcast, the Pure Desire podcast, it's an opportunity to evaluate, like, man, I wasn't ready for that feeling.
Yeah.
What is that feeling telling me? But you always, the baseline doing the right thing is always where we want to try to get to. You know what I mean? And then you understand, okay, why was this one a little harder? What happened? Have I fully,
and I think it always
did
goes
I stop
back,
therapy too early?
Right.
Do I need to go back to group?
Yeah. Is there something unaddressed is what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it always goes back a lot to the messaging. I just don't think enough people are told, like, this doesn't have to be a thing in your life. Like, it doesn't have to be something you struggle with forever.
Right.
Emotions will always be there. Stress will always be there. Like, things, like bad things in life happening, somebody getting sick, a family member dying, things happen. So use this process to learn how to live life. But your response to those stressors does not always have to be a lifelong struggle.
Yeah, right.
That's a very disempowering approach. And I think not enough people are empowered in recovery to say, like, you really get to transform your life. And that's kind of literally why we decided to do what we do.
I think what's really hit me probably more so this 5th year is these moments where I'll feel vulnerable, I'll feel uncertain, I will feel like I don't know what to say. And what always hits me though is I'm like, oh yeah, 6 years ago that would have led to some sort of acting out within 24 to 36 hours. You know what I mean? Those emotions, because I didn't like to feel those, or through all of my conditioning and everything like that, I never thought it wise to sit in those.
So I want to address a little, like, super briefly, are the brains different part, because I was like, I'm going to Google this and actually see, like, is there any science behind this concept, or is it really just, societal, which I think it's societal mostly. So there is, and I'll post the link to this in the show notes if somebody wants to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs of this article that came up. It was in 2019. It said, you know that old myth that men are more visual and get turned on more easily than women do? Well, a large new meta-analysis of dozens of studies on the theory just called BS. The biggest factor that affected how much of a person's brain got activated, the particular type of sexual content they viewed. The least predictive factor, gender. Following a thorough statistical review of all significant neuroimaging studies, we offer strong quantitative evidence that the neuronal response to visual sexual stimuli, contrary to the widely accepted view, is independent of biological sex. The researchers write, our analysis demonstrates that there is no functional dimorphism in response to visual sexual stimuli between men and women.
Yeah.
They did have a note. It looked like that one slight difference was that the amygdala was a little more activated in men. So my thinking there is kind of the same thing. Like, men have to really be taught how to feel their emotions and how to self-regulate. Women are sort of generally, again, societally taught those things more heavily, more early, more frequently, in general. So I don't necessarily think that undermines anything or points to, oh, see, their brains really are different in response to it. I think it's more still about, hey, like, fear, anxiety, self-control. Like, men still get to be taught those things. And let's face it, generally speaking, they're taught differently. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, maybe little girls are not exposed to pornography the way little boys are because of that. Maybe boys will be boys kind of culture, the way I was, like, you know what I mean? But what they're finding is more and more and more women, when exposed to pornography and dealing with all the garbage in society, are starting to get addicted to it as well. It's not really, it's becoming, I think that highlights.
Well, they're saying your brain basically responds the same way.
Yeah.
So I want to, there's a couple things too I just want to kind of touch on in terms of, towards a betrayed partner with this. But before I jump into that, I just want to readdress the first sentence of the question, which is it possible for men to turn off their attraction? So I think the super short answer to that is yes. If that's talking about, hey, like I see someone and then I take it too far and I do something inappropriate with that, right? Absolutely. That's part of recovery. The longer answer, I kind of want to break this down a little bit in terms of betrayed partners. So Number one, we've already talked about this, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But number one, yes, I do think a lot of it is societal. I think men and women are taught differently. I think women grow up with the assumption that their brains have self-control. They're literally taught that they don't objectify men, so they just don't. I mean, they do sometimes, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just sort of the baseline that like, hey, like, we don't have to go there with our brains. We're literally taught, we don't have to go there with your brains. And boys are literally taught, you're probably going to be struggling against your brain. You're probably going to think about this. You're probably going to do, well, you're literally like pumping him full of those ideas when you do that, you know, as opposed to just teaching them other things like self-control and like getting along with, you know, their girlfriends in a normal way. So, so I definitely think there has a ton to do with societal shaping. Two, if you're in a coupleship and you are listening to this podcast, make sure you are defining your words. So this already came up earlier in this episode where Patrick made a comment and I said, can you clarify what you mean? Because some people would interpret it this way, right? So this came up when we did episodes 128 and 127. So 127 is noticing versus arousal. When is attraction too much? Episode 128 is attraction the same as lusting? So this came up where I think it might have been with the word attraction. And that's what came up earlier in this episode when you were using it one way and the interpretation can be the other way. Some people don't like certain words because they have a certain meaning associated with them, and someone else, right or wrong, whatever Webster's dictionary definition of it is, doesn't really matter. It matters how you are viewing the word. And a lot of couples will have full-on recovery conversations using a totally different dictionary in their head. And so I think it's really, 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 really crucial. I suggest to my betrayed partners constantly to make sure that you are defining terms like this. Make sure you define what recovery is. Make sure you define what relapse is. Make sure you guys have these conversations about what does lusting mean to you? What does attraction mean to you? What does arousal mean to you? Like, what are these words that we're going to be using through this process? Because if you're coming at the same conversation from different angles, like you're going to be triggering each other massively simply because there's a misunderstanding of the language.
Fully define the terms.
So
for your relationship.
For your relationship and the way like your life experiences have led you. And I even had that, I had a conversation with Keegan one time, and he and I were totally interpreting a word differently. Now, again, dictionary definition aside, I think I'm right, but Keegan interpreted it totally differently, and it was the word temptation. So like that's another one. Like if you're going through recovery and you're going, oh, I'm tempted by blah, 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 what does that mean? What does that actually mean? Because in my mind, similar to like the attraction thing that we were talking about earlier, right? Temptation means I'm pulled towards doing a bad thing. I'm actually like interested in or like I'm, you know, and in Keegan's mind, he's like, no, it just means that the option is presented in front of you. It doesn't have anything to do with your internal state. Like you're tempted, meaning, hey, like the ice cream bowl is put in front of you, but it doesn't have anything to do with being pulled to eat the ice cream.
Right. And somebody might even say, well, it was the notice and then fear response went up.
And that's temptation, right?
But
it's the amygdala being activated.
Yeah,
that's temptation. It's like, okay, so these are the conversations I encourage people that are working through recovery to have with each other, because you've got to understand how each other's brains work. And like what you just said, right? Is it the ice cream bowl? Is it your brain recognizing the ice cream bowl? Is it like a guilt response because you used to binge ice cream bowls all the time, and now you see an ice cream bowl, but you actually don't want to eat that, right? So, but
ice cream bowls,
no
ice cream tonight,
vanilla. Yeah. So you see what I'm saying? So that whole process that happens in your brain in 30 seconds, I could interpret if you said one sentence very differently than what you just experienced in your body, right? And so we have to use a lot of time, I think, to have these conversations, to dig into, like, what do we actually mean when we're using these words?
You know, as you were walking through that, you know, being able to talk and stuff. The other part of this, it's really, really important. So let's say, like, here's a good example. I did not, you know, we talked about myself in the physical world, right? But even you and I, you were uncomfortable going to like a beach, right? So like,
okay, so pause, because you said we talked about you in the physical world. What you're saying is you've never really ogled people in real life. The problems that you had with addiction, it was all virtual.
Problem. Yeah. And so like, I think through this process,
you've never been like triggered by people in the real world.
Yeah. So I think through this process, you also have to do what drives safety in the relationship.
Right.
So if and I remember it was one of our early experiences, if Star Trek triggers the betrayed spouse, but the addict had no issue with anybody, back to your point about communicating with each other, like maybe Star Trek is off the table. Maybe going to a beach vacation is off the table for a while, right? You know, like do things that allow you to become more and more grounded.
Stability.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, nothing is forever. Well, certain things are forever, of course, but, you know, like healthy activities are not off the table forever, right? And so, but they may be off the table for a time as you continue to move through things. But I also think it's important at such point that you have to get back out into the world. And now that doesn't mean that you just start watching whatever you want on TV that has all kinds of inappropriate things in it. But my point is like, there's like, you and I have talked about this, like people in bathing suits, it's not in and of itself inappropriate. It's how you approach that. So, you know, now sometimes the way TV shows and movies will portray people in
sexualize everything.
Yeah, they'll sexualize. That is inappropriate in my opinion. And so maybe that's something that's off the table forever. But engaging in healthy activity.
Yeah, so like here's an example. For a long time, watching different shows or whatever, like I'm not personally triggered by things myself, right? And so I would, even through your recovery, watch certain things without you. But if we were watching something together, different TV shows or whatever, or there'd be a woman that I thought was like really attractive, or, you know, different, whatever it might be, there might be something that would be uncomfortable for me to watch with you. Right? So I think it is, you have to talk through all of those things of what is going to help the betrayed partner feel safe so that she can calm her nervous system, what is going to help the addict recover so that his amygdala calms down and his nervous system is calm, so the two of you can approach each other in calm safety. And then at that point, to your point, when you're deep in recovery, like we watch TV shows together now, there's a lot of times where I'm like, oh my gosh, like 3 years ago, I would have been super triggered by that.
Oh, yeah.
And that didn't even bother me because I'm not worried about you in that situation.
Yeah. Well, and also too, like if one of you is triggered early on in recovery, the other one is. It's just going to happen that way. So like finding ways to, you know, to navigate through things where you're both not always triggered, you know, or like forcing something or whatever, like, you know, work on that's where the communication comes in. Like, hey, I'd really, really like to watch this movie. I don't think I'm ready for you to watch that movie. I know it's not inherently bad, but, you know, there's the scene in the pool and there's nothing inappropriate, but I don't necessarily like it yet and wouldn't want you to watch it. Can we not? Got it. No problem. You know what I mean? And so like,
well, there's even been times where like, you'll ask me to look something up on Common Sense. By the way, if you haven't heard us mention that before, commonsensemedia.com. It's great. We anything that we're going to watch together, pretty much we look that up first, so I can see exactly like what the content is, and then we can decide. So there have been times where like you've asked me to look it up, and I'm sitting there thinking about it, or I'll show the content like a paragraph to you, and you'll be like, nope, okay, like you just make the decision. You're like, it's not that important to me.
Right.
So, but a piece of that too is that like you essentially are stepping in to preserve my safety.
Yeah, it's not that important to me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, but I think that's really
your safety is very important. Me watching the movie is not that important.
But that's my point is that it's such an easy decision for you. So I can imagine in a lot of cases, like let's say there's a movie buff out there that really likes movies, for example, right? There's situations where that could be a real fight for people. But I think that brings it into perspective in terms of like, what is the priority? Is the priority recovery, yours and your partner's, because you've dragged that person into this situation that they didn't ask for and now they're super traumatized? Like, are you going to help them, or are you going to push for your freedom so hard that you're hurting them more? So I trust myself and I'm in recovery, and why don't you want to watch this with me, or why don't you let me watch it, or Well, they can't make you not watch something. So if you're complying, you're complying. Don't hold it over their head. Either, tell them you're going to do it or don't do it, but don't hold it over somebody's head, because that's information for a betrayed partner too. If we set a boundary about what we're going to tolerate and then you step over it like that, we need to be honest about it. We need that information, right? But don't comply and then hold it over our head, right? So that's a whole other tangent. But my point in bringing that up is your responses to these things that could be minefields in a lot of situations always made me feel like you cared about my safety and recovery. Oh, yeah. So I felt like I was the priority, pretty much second to your recovery. Like you were on the fast track to recovery, and then you were going to do as much as you could to help me. And so something that would come up like that, it seemed like, at least, and I don't know if it ever was, never really felt to me like it was a doubt in your mind. If you got an inkling that I would be uncomfortable with something, you'd be like, well, we can change the plan. Like, it's not a big deal. Yeah. Like, we'll do whatever, we can just, and I want to say that because it's important. Mm-hmm. If a partner is staying after being betrayed, it's really, really hard. It's really hard to recover. It's really hard to trust again. So the level of effort that it takes for us to work on our own healing, but if we're staying in relationship, the person who has hurt us has to be involved in healing if we want to get, through it. And so that's just an example of how that happens.
Well, and also too, I think I became very, very aware of the things that were patterned on my addiction, right? So something in a movie has a parallel to my addiction.
Sure.
Right? Because it's on a screen. Mm-hmm. And so now granted, to your point about the guy that got the drink, today I'd probably be like, whoa, what was that? You know what I mean? And then I'd be like, okay, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But so I also felt in that moment that it was good for me too. It was a healing moment for me as well to kind of say, hey, I don't need to be exposed to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's parallels to my addiction. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so let's punt that down the road. Maybe there's a way to watch it that it deletes the scene or whatever. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Or an edited version, yeah. But it's like, I think it's this idea sometimes where people, I'm trying to think about how to word this. It's this idea that I'm going to value being perceived or feeling myself like I'm living a normal life as opposed to valuing health.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And there's a difference. Yep. Health does require boundaries, especially when you've blown up your life and other people's lives.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so normal for you may not be normal for somebody else. But if you are reaching for somebody else's normal, mm-hmm. and that's your definition of normal, and you might through recovery need to redefine that. Yeah. So if you think about kids, right? Like people that are adults and know what the safety laws are can cross the street by themselves, right? Yeah. A kid is not going to be doing that, right? Mm-hmm. There are different boundaries are just healthy in life, personal boundaries, all this kind of stuff, right? So for somebody that's a recovering addict, that's a good question to think about. Like, what is my actual priority? Is it creating health, or is it I want to be perceived inside myself as normal? And what does that mean? Because I know you struggled with that a little bit. You had this, there was one phase, it was fairly short, but it would pop up a couple times where you're like, I just want to feel normal. I want to feel normal. And your definition of that meant that some of the boundaries that you still have up would come down. And there was this part of you, I think, that wanted to come and defend your sobriety and be like, I deserve that. And then you just thought through it and you're like, actually, it's not a bad boundary. Actually, it's really okay that I live life this way. And you kind of had to work through that emotionally. But I think that's important to bring up because sometimes when people have made decisions that hurt themselves or others, normal doesn't look for you what it might for your neighbor. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. But anyway, I thought I bring that up.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because the being able to download apps, the cool thing that I like about, and I've thought about this, so I can't download an app on my phone. It's an opportunity. You and I come to each other, we talk about it, and if it makes sense, which it always does, because I'm not going to ask you to download an app that's crazy, right? It's always like Delta Airlines or whatever. You just download it, and so you feel safe. I get what I need. You know what I mean? So
essentially you've reframed, this isn't normal. I don't get to be normal. You've reframed that into actually this brings our relationship more safety.
Yeah. Yeah,
and helps us have a conversation about something. So she always knows what's going on in my life. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay, so the third thing, because we got really off tangent there. So I was talking about the betrayed partner responses to this. Definitely thinking it has a lot to do with societal shaping. Make sure you define the words you're having in communication. Mm-hmm. And then we were just talking boundaries. I was going to share for the betrayed partner or any betrayed partner, the betrayed partner that asked the question, or any betrayed partner that might be going through this questioning, right? Or going through recovery in general. I just want to share, it's okay for the betrayed partner to have whatever boundary you want in these areas. If you do not want your partner ogling other women in public, that is a very natural, very normal expectation to have in a monogamous relationship.
Absolutely.
If you want to have a boundary that says, you don't, like, you have a partner that doesn't have access to pornographic websites, like, that's a very normal expectation, right? Now, the thing is that you have to remember, a boundary means that you are setting limits on what you're going to tolerate. So you have to be ready to respond to how they respond to your boundary. A boundary is you're setting limits on what you say you will tolerate, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they will comply.
Right.
So if you set a boundary and an expectation, you need to be ready for them not to respect it, and then what you're going to do about it. Because I always say a boundary is just a wish if you don't have a response ready for it. Yeah. But if somebody steps over your boundary, that means that you're going to take action on that. Yeah. So what happens if you say, I don't want you ogling women in public, or I don't want you ogling women at all? Like, this whole question of, like, is this the way a man's brain is made, right? Yeah. If he wants to hold to this idea that, like, it's just how I am, and that is not how you view the world, then you're really going to need to think about, what does my life look like in 5 years if my partner is saying this is just how he is and he's not willing to do anything about it? He's probably not going to do anything about it. So what does my life look like in 5 years living with that? Or what does my life look like in 5 years if I make a different decision right now? That's right. So it's really important when you are thinking through, what are the expectations I have? What are the boundaries that I set? What are the things that, what is the evidence that my partner is currently giving me? Because again, not everything is going to be overnight, but are they giving you evidence of change? Are they progressing through recovery, right? Do you see that the progress is at an angle that feels good? And I'm going to encourage you over and over and over, set whatever boundary you want, but make sure you're ready to respond if they don't respect it. And always think about, if I am getting evidence that they are not respecting my boundaries, if I am getting evidence that they don't have the same worldview and values as I do, and they're not heading in the same direction that I want to, and they're not helping me create safety, and, like, this just is not working, I'll always encourage people to think 5 or 10 years down the road. What does it look like if the trajectory that I'm on right now, with the evidence that is being given to me right now, compiles over the next 5 to 10 years? How does that feel in my system to think about that compiling for 5 to 10 years? Yeah. Because that just helps us make decisions about things and where we want to go and the boundaries we want to set.
And that's reality. I mean, for me, I was like, okay, I'll be done by the time I'm 40. And then I get discovered at 49. So obviously I didn't quit when I was 40, right? And so time marches on. It just kind of gets there. And so you're right. If you're not action-oriented, boundary-oriented, you're going to be still wrestling with us. And how do you feel? Yeah. The one thing that I do want to make sure that I bring up is, when somebody has a pornography addiction, the good news is you can go in and you can shut down access, you can take away access, you can do all of those things, and then within 90 days they change and stuff like that. If somebody has an oogling problem, or a walk through the world objectification problem, what I would encourage you to do is, if they're working with a therapist, get from them what the therapist has recommended, or maybe the therapist can email you, like, what are the steps that they can work on? What are the tactics? What are the what's the reframing that's happening? Right.
What are the processes that they're learning to calm their body, calm their mind? If somebody just says, bounce your eyes away, like, then maybe.
Well, that's effective, I think, in the short term, right? Because you do, like, if you're like, oh, that's a very, very short term.
Right, but you don't want to just think that's the answer.
That's right.
Is the point.
Right. Yeah.
If that's your response initially because you were startled, then that's a normal response. Right. But the point is, you want to get to the point where you don't have the startle response.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to be able to breathe through it. You want to be able to just see people in the world. You just want,
Yeah.
So that's the point. If you're going through the world being startled, again, it's your amygdala response. You have anxiety. You have fear when you're looking at women. Like, let's not have fear when we're looking at women. Like, they're 51% of the population.
Right. Let's figure out where that's coming from.
Yeah. So that's the point when I talk about the messaging. I think we've trained men to be afraid of women. Like, women are somehow dangerous walking down the street. And it's like, No, they're human beings.
Yeah.
So let's just practice learning how to see human beings and not have fear responses and not have our brains go places we don't want.
Yeah. But I guess my point is like good recovery activity has tools and SOPs.
Right. So learning what those are.
And so like for you, and I would have the addict go get those for you, or the guy who has betrayed you. You know what I mean? Like, say, hey, I need to know what techniques you're using.
If he says I'm working on it, he should be able to answer the question, how are you working on it?
Right.
And be able to give evidence that,
That's right.
okay, my
That's
therapist is saying this, or we did EMDR on this, or we're helping my nervous system by this breathing technique. And, I'm practicing that, or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
For women, make sure you go to recoveryoucoaching.com and check out the What's Next course. That's for betrayed partners. And there's a whole module, I believe it's module 3, that teaches you how to support your nervous system and your body through triggers and through emotions. And a lot of that is stuff that your partner can use. So I encourage the betrayed partners to get the What's Next course, but there's a video in there, the PAUSE video, which is an acronym I use to teach you how to check in with your body, name the emotions, how to support your body, if it's getting activated, all that in one little acronym that you can memorize and use very easily. And I encourage you to go through the course if you are considering reconciliation at all, because it goes through the disclosure process and all these things that you need to think about. It answers like almost any common question that betrayed partners have through this process. But a lot of those videos in the Support Your Body module can also be really helpful for the addict as well. And you guys can learn the same tools and the same techniques and help each other and remind each other, maybe when you're getting activated in a conversation, hey, let's pause. Let's use the PAUSE acronym. Let's step aside for a minute, and then we can come back together. So there's also a module in there about understanding addict brain and how to support it through recovery. So there's a lot of information in there. So check it out. The link is in the show notes.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick, anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Well, we always appreciate when listeners submit questions. So please continue to do so. If you are a betrayed partner, you can join the free Recover You Facebook group. That's where this question was posted. So we would love to hear from you. Anything else that you would like to have us cover in any future episodes?
Yeah, absolutely. Love to hear from you. Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we'll see you next week.
Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.